Hey guys, how's it going? TRX Traveler Adam here. In this video I'm going to take you through a TRX leg day across 3 exercises. Let's get to it. So I'm always putting out sort of content to try and help people with TRX exercises, technique and specific intent with exercise and mind-to-muscle connection, meditative states. And I've realised I've never actually put a video out of just me doing my workout. So I thought it might be beneficial and helpful to do one. So I've just recorded myself doing a leg day. It's just 3 exercises. It's 2 exercises to focus on the quads, the front. 1 exercise to focus on the back, the hamstrings and the glutes. And prior to this workout, I did a little bit of 5 minutes of just calf work, but I didn't include that because it's quite that sort of basic stuff. But I really wanted to show you how I train, and specifically how I the technique I'm using, the mindful intent for every single exercise I'm doing, why I do certain things, why I stretch here, why I stretch then, why I do this tempo. It's 20 minutes. The workout itself was maybe about 35 minutes. This is by no means the absolute best workout for TRX legs, but it's a very sort of what I'd say a basic principle workout that if you do correctly, it's all you'll need for quite a long time to notice development and gains. But obviously the key aspect is doing it correctly. Now the 3 exercises, the tempo I use across all of them is basically 4 seconds downwards, so 4 seconds on the negative, 1 second back up, and then on a couple of the exercises I do 1 second hard contraction at the top. But throughout all the 3 exercises, it's 3 sets for each one, so 3 sets, 3 sets, 3 sets. And you'll notice I do a lot of introspection. I do some sort of contracting specific of the muscles every time I finish the exercise. And you'll also notice that I take each set to failure, to real depletion. That's not necessarily needed if you're sort of a beginner to intermediate, or you're already seeing quite good results in the program you're following. I wouldn't necessarily then say, right, you need to jump in and deplete every single set. Varying ranges of intensity. They come into play the more sort of plateaus you start reaching, and there's multiple different ways you can add intensity to take a muscle through total depletion. And when I say total depletion, I'm talking about the concentric, isometric and eccentric phase, and I talk a little bit more about that as I show you the workout. So without any further blabbering, this is how to do a leg day for muscle gains workout. Let's get to it.
So I always start most of my TRX workouts with the same warm-up, and then I'll extend them based on whether it's a sort of upper body or a lower body. So I like to start with some just rotations. Obviously the video here is speeded up twice double speed, so I'm not this fast. But I always start with some rotations, and then I start with some side to sides. And then I like to move on to some just simple arm swinging, knees up front, and then I'll swing them the other way and knees behind. I'm always very cautious about warming up, more so cautious about the workout, so I put a lot of emphasis on the warm up. I think the statistic is something like 80 to 90% of injuries from the general sort of fitness enthusiasts. They range between the hip area and the shoulder girdle. So whenever I warm up, no matter what I'm doing, I'll always pay particular attention. As you can see here, I'm doing some external and internal rotations, and then again just back to the shoulder girdle. I'll always pay particular attention to warm up the whole entire hip region and the shoulder girdle region, just because there's such complex areas, and they are very easy to injure if they're not properly warmed up, especially specifically the joints. So this is why I work through ranges of motion here to really warm up the joints, and you can see I'm doing prone flies here. And again, that's to warm up the rear deltoid. I'm retracting my shoulder blades back. I'm really focusing on that, sticking my chest out, pulling my shoulders back. And now I've moved on to shrugs. Again, this is just because I'm paying a particular attention to the shoulder girdle area. Now, because this is a leg day, I'll only do 1 set of the shrugs and the sort of prone flies, whereas if I was doing an upper body day, it would be 2 sets of them rotating around. And now I've moved on to side leg raises. Again, just really warming up the hip area, rotating it right out and back in. Not necessarily concentrating on contracting a muscle here. It's just working through the range of motion to warm up the joints all around the hip area. So I'll do the side raises, and then I also, after the side raises, I move on to front and back raises. I always like to, and you'll see in a minute, I always like to do a little bit of stretching as well in the warm-up. You know, people say that you shouldn't necessarily do static stretching, it should be dynamic. I like to do a bit of both. You'll see I come on to sort of lunges, deep lunges soon, just to already stretch out the front hip flexors and my quads. But then I also like to do static. And why do I like to do static stretching? I love to do static stretching all the time throughout my TRX workouts or band workouts or body weight workouts, because if you think about what is the principle of stretching, it still breaks down a muscle, yeah, it still causes micro tears. What happens then? That causes inflammation. It tells the body to respond. It tells the body to flood loads of blood there, to push loads of nutrient there because something needs fixing. I'll just tell you what I'm doing now. So I did a lot of kickboxing training several years ago, for years. So here I like to just do a little bit of front jabs, some uppercuts, some sort of ball work. And again, it's just really good at loosening up the joints. And now here you can see I'm doing some practicing some kickboxing kicks. So sort of front kicks, heel kicks, and side kicks. Because again, these are just really good for loosening up the hip region. And obviously that's what we're going to be working out here. So yeah, it's back to why I love to incorporate stretching. Stretching, it encourages the body to send more blood to that area. So if we're going to be working that area, training that area, that's exactly what we want. I see it as almost like a free bit of exercise, you know. So every time I do an exercise, I love to stretch the muscle after and just encourage even more blood to be pushed there. If you look at Frank Zane, if you've read any of Frank Zane's autobiographies, Frank Zane was a fantastic bodybuilder athlete. And he was very much into stretching and meditation. Specifically, he would really emphasize stretching after every single exercise. So stretch that muscle. And his physique was fantastic, and I think so was his whole sort of ability to feel his muscles internally contract and control his body. And I certainly have noticed a massive difference since I stretch in between. And now here, as I say, I'm now moving on to the stretches. I only hold them for 15 seconds. If I wanted to do a purposeful longer stretches, I would save that for maybe a rest day or for after the workout. But again, like I say, the idea of the stretching here is more just to encourage the body to send blood there. You know, stretch the muscles out, encourage the body to send blood there, start beginning to get that pump. Because we want the muscle to be pumped up and warm as we get into the exercise. Because statistically speaking, a muscle that is warmed up and pumped and primed develops 30% better after a workout. So it's worth paying particular attention to your warm up, even going over some of the exercise that you're possibly going to be doing. And after this exercise here, I'm just stretching out my calves here, and I was stretching out my hamstrings before that, and my hip flexors and my outer quads. So you'll see after this stretch here, now I'm going through the motions here of an actual squat. So as I'm pulling down here, I'm contracting my hamstrings and glutes super hard to pull my body down, and then I'm contracting my quads super hard to explode back up. And I'm going down for 4 seconds here, and then 1 second back up. And you can see my face, I'm really straining because I'm really wanting to challenge the muscle. Even though it's just a warm-up, I'm wanting to push, I'm wanting to contract and squeeze and practice that mindful state of contracting the muscle. And even here now, so I'm leaning back, I'm squeezing my hamstrings, I'm contracting them here, I'm squeezing my front quads. So I'm really getting connected with them and focusing on what it feels like, so I can then take that into the exercise. And now we start the first exercise. So as I said in the intro, this is 3 exercises. This first one is the overhead squat. Now this might just look easy, an overhead squat. You might just think I'm going up and down, but there's a couple of key things here what completely change it, and it's the mindful intent what I'm doing. So first of all, I'm doing 1.5 reps. So that means that 1 rep means I go down, I come up halfway, I go back down, then I come up a full way, and that's 1 rep. So 1.5 reps, a really good way of just adding more tension onto the muscle that you're targeting. And speaking of the muscle I'm targeting, I'm really focusing here on targeting the outer quad muscles. So what I'm doing, I'm constantly pushing my feet outwards against the ground. So as I go up, I'm pushing them outwards. As I go down, I'm pushing them outwards. I never stop trying to push my feet outwards against the floor. And you'll find if you do this, this turns the movement from just a squat movement, so you're just going through the motions, to an actual exercise of intent where I'm focusing on the outer quad muscle, and it makes it so much harder. So I think I only managed 8 reps there, I think, and that because I'm shooting for the 8 rep range. But you'll notice how I took it to depletion. So I did the 8 reps, and then I went halfway, and then I started doing partials, and then finally I started holding on an isometric. So I'll show you that again on the next set. And here, as I said to you, as soon as I finished the exercise, I immediately contracted the muscle. So I focused on squeezing the muscle, and then I went straight into stretching the outer quads there. Now on this one, I'll talk you through a little bit more so I can get a bit more specific. Resting, I'm only resting for maybe up to 30-40 seconds in between sets, and I'm straight back to it. So my hands are up here, shoulder blades are contracted back. I'm constantly now just focusing on pushing my feet outwards. So I'm pushing them out as hard as I can against the floor, super hard. And if you try this, you will notice how difficult it gets. And you can see I'm starting to fail, and there's my half rep, there's my full rep. And I'm failing, so I'm just doing partials, I'm trying to hold my body weight, and then I'm collapsing. So I'm taking these sets to failure. I'm not saying you have to, I'm just saying that this is what I do sometimes. There's various ways of increasing intensity. I like to do drop sets as well, which include a lot of my programs. But on this occasion, from these 3 different exercises we're doing, I'm taking every set to pretty much failure. And failure means across the concentric, the isometric, and the eccentric. So the contracting, the holding it, so you're holding the weight solid, and then finally lowering the weight. Those are your 3 sort of strength areas of a muscle. The contraction one, so on here the contraction would be when I explode up. That is the weakest. The isometric would be just holding my body weight in a squat. That is the second strongest. And the third, the eccentric, would be as I lower myself. That is the third strongest sort of mode of a muscle. So I'm wanting to deplete it across all 3 modes. Hence why towards the end, when I get really tired, I then do partials just to really sort of deplete the concentric. And then here you can see I'm just doing tiny partials. I'm trying to hold it. I'm pushing my feet out, and I'm collapsing because this is the eccentric strength I'm breaking down. And you can see I can barely walk, and that's just after a few sets. You can see I'm starting to sweat. Now this is the difference between just moving with the TRX and actually training, focusing. And here I'm now squeezing the quads hard, and now I'll lie down and I'll go straight into stretching. So this is the difference between just moving with the TRX, which I see far too often, where compared with actually mindfully exercising, focusing on that muscle you want to train, which for me here is the outer quads, because I want to build some width to my legs, and purposely, mindfully focusing on that. And to help that is exactly why I push my feet outwards, because it puts all the tension on the outer quads. Not all, but 80 to 90% of the tension is on the outer quads, and I can keep them constantly burning and working. And just after them 3 sets, I'm knackered. I can tell you now, I was knackered. Now for this second exercise, it's lunges. And you'll see what I like to do for lunges. Again, we're using the same tempo. So as I said in the introduction video, the tempo I'm using throughout all these is basically 3 to 4 seconds down. I try and aim for 4 seconds down, and then 1 second explode up, and then on certain exercises like this one here, I might take a second at the top just to really focus on the squeeze. So here it's 4 seconds down. You can see I'm a little bit wobbly, a little bit unstable. I squeeze hard to come back up at the top. Now notice how I'm placing my body weight over the quad, because I just want to work the quad. Specifically, I'm working the inner and medial, so the inner and middle part of the quad here. And that's what, I've already worked the outer quad in the past one. Here I want to work the middle and the inner. So I'm squeezing super hard as I go down. I'm trying not to engage my glutes too much and trying not to sit too far back so my hamstrings engage on the way down. I really want to keep all the tension on my quads. And you can see my balance is a little bit off, and because I'm pushing myself, so I'm not holding on the side, but I'm just using the side to guide. And there's no harm in that whatsoever. If I wanted to focus on more of a balance exercise, I might make this a little bit easier, and I might not even use the TRX. I might just do lunges from a static position. But here, because I'm really wanting to emphasize, put all the tension on that quad, I'm using it to balance. And you can see I'm exhausted here, so I'm going into partials. There's a tiny partial, there's a tiny partial. Am I going to come up again? No, I'm exhausting the eccentric, slow, and right down. And you can see it's knackering. And what do? I straight away contract the muscle. So I'm contracting my left quad here super hard. And then what do straight after that? I stretch. And you can see just from these exercises, I mean, I did do some calf work before this. So I was a little, I was a bit hot from that, but you can see this is only my fourth set after doing 3 sets of the overhead squat, and I'm sweating. Why is that? It's because I'm violently contracting the muscle. I'm really focusing on just squeezing that quad as hard as possible. And now I move on to the next leg, and it's the same principle. It doesn't really matter too much where you stand. All the body understands is the tension you place through the muscle. That's all it understands. It's not going to understand if your foot's a little bit inch forward or an inch back. As long as you're doing this in a controlled manner, it's safe. And as long as you're emphasizing putting all that effort on the muscle you're targeting, so here the quads, then it's going to be working, and it's going to be breaking it down. It's going to be getting development. Don't focus or don't get too caught up in having exact placements or the exact length of the TRX or worrying about stuff like that, because it's good as you get more advanced to record all that, and I love recording that stuff, don't get me wrong, but I think people get too caught up in it, and at the end of the day your body doesn't know. It doesn't know the difference between holding a broomstick or holding a dumbbell. All it knows is the tension you place. So your body doesn't really know the difference of how long the TRX handle is going to be, or exactly where your foot is. All it knows is the tension you're placing through the muscle. So as long as you're placing the tension hard on that muscle, which here is the quad, keep that as your focus. Sometimes people get really caught up in like, oh well, how long should the TRX handle be, and all that sort of stuff. And there's no, we're all different. We all have different biomechanics. We're all built differently. It doesn't really matter too much. Yes, it's the principle of it is obviously sound and being sensible around where the level should be, but as long as you can take your body through the range of motion and really focus on what you're trying to contract and squeeze the muscle, then that's great. That's what you should be focusing on. So again, here obviously I'm sort of coming up to my final sets on each leg. So I do 3 sets on each leg here, and you can see I'm balancing, I'm going down. I'm not sitting too far deep. I'm going just sort of parallel because I don't want any other muscles to take over and take the strain. I just want to keep it on the quad. You can see that I'm squeezing super hard, and then I go on to stretch that muscle for 15 seconds. And again, coming back to the stretching, I've since several years ago when I started intra-stretching, so stretching after every set, I noticed a massive difference in my body in the way I didn't get knots as much. I wasn't sort of like, I was aching, but I wasn't that tight ache where you feel all sort of tight and bunched up. I really found that my flexibility and my sort of the ease on my joints, it's really developed very well. Like when I used to lift back in my early 20s heavy weights, I would only just focus on lifting heavy weights and nothing else. My form was poor, my technique was poor. It was all just gym lifting and bro lifting of, oh, how heavy can you lift, who can lift the heaviest. And I used to have constant knots, my back especially. I had constant knots, constant aches, pains. I'd get little like glitches, I'd call it, in my back, where I'd suddenly like spaz out a bit. And all that's gone. I mean, yes, my technique has got better, but I do think that intra-stretching, it really sort of it helps ease all that the next day. Because I've even noticed it if I do a hard TRX training session and I don't intra-stretch, I sometimes find that I get little knots that I have to work out with a little ball or a foam roller. So as well as the added benefit of the fact that it brings more blood and it causes more development in the muscle overall, there's also the other added benefit of it. You just feel better. You feel more flexible. You feel more like at ease the next day. So I'd recommend trying intra-stretching after every exercise if you've never tried it and you're looking to sort of advance a little bit. Here you can see I'm on my final set and I'm absolutely depleting there. You can see my face, you can see it's, I'm pushing it to failure. If you're a beginner, there's no need to be doing this. There's no need to be pushing each exercise to failure. Just hit your rep range and that's suitable until you start advancing, until you hit a plateau. And you can see there, squeezed the quad, just really focus, give it an extra squeeze, connected with it, and now I'm stretching it out. And the third exercise, which is the final exercise, is the hamstring curls. So you can see we've done that's the second exercise on the front of the legs. Prior to those two, I did do some calf work on the stairs, which you can see just in the background there to the right. I put a bag on my back with some weight in, some water bottles, and I just did very slow calf work. So I go 4 seconds up, 4 seconds squeeze at the top, 4 seconds down, and 4 seconds stretch at the bottom. And that's just 1 rep for the calves, because the calves are they're slow twitch fibers, so they're very resilient. So you've really got to slowly burn them and slowly work them out. So here, the TRX hamstring curls. Now, there's a couple of little key points on the hamstring curls. These are fantastic when they're done right. I see a lot of people just moving though and just kind of like rocking up and down, and you've got to train with intent here. So first of all, you'll see that I use 1 second and it's not a 1 second explode, it's a controlled 1 second up. Then when I'm right at the top here, I squeeze for an extra second, so I'm squeezing there. And then when I'm lowering, it's 4 seconds. However, at the bottom, notice what I do when I lower my legs right to the bottom. I squeeze my quads, so I contract my quad muscles. There you go, I've contracted my quad muscles. Now, why do I contract my quad muscles at the bottom? I contract my quad muscles at the bottom because when one muscle contracts, the opposite muscle, the opposing muscle, has to lengthen. Because when one shortens, one must lengthen. So that means at the bottom there, when I contract the quads, it's lengthening the hamstrings even more. Now, what is good exercise? What is good form? It's lifting through a full range of motion. Now, the bigger we can take that range of motion, the better. So from taking a muscle from a lengthened stretch state to a very short contracted state is ideal for muscle development, for performance development, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm contracting the quads just so I can get that little bit of extra stretch in the hamstrings, and it's also not allowing the hamstrings to rest at the bottom. We never want to allow the muscle we're targeting to rest. We want to constantly keep tension. And here you can see I'm squeezing the hamstrings. I'm also squeezing the glutes as well, because the glutes come into play. And then as soon as I finish just a few seconds of squeezing, contracting, I'll then stretch. And here you see I stretch right over and get a really good stretch in the hams there. And you can see how much I'm sweating here. Now this is only the third exercise. I'm sweating a lot because I'm intensely focusing on that one muscle. Yeah, I'm not incorporating multiple muscles, so making it easier for my body. I'm making it hard for my body. I'm putting it through high intensity training on one specific muscle, and I'm really focused on breaking that area down. So here it's the hamstrings. And again, just a little bit of water, and then I'm going straight back into it. When I bend over here, I'm just recording my results in my notebook, the rep ranges I hit. And as again, throughout all this, I'm aiming for 8 reps, and it's 4 seconds down, 1 second controlled contraction up, and then sometimes a second hold at the top, and no seconds at the bottom. So at the bottom would be here where I contract the quads to lengthen the hamstrings. And you can see there's the contraction of the quads, there's the hard squeeze at the top, contraction of the quads, hard squeeze at the top. And look, if you notice how my arms are quite relaxed, so I'm not tensing too much. I'm not trying to tense my body by pushing on the floor, pushing down. I'm focusing on trying to keep my body stable and just put all the tension in there. And you'll see here, I was starting to fail there. I'll make sure I point that out in the next final set. But you see how I was reaching failure, and I started just to do partials. So I was even just going halfway curl, then it got down to just a quarter curl, and then finally it got down to just a hold. So I was basically just holding it before I then finally let it go. And that's, again, I'm taking it to failure. So every set I'm taking it to failure. Again, I'm not saying you need to do this. If you're quite sort of beginner to intermediate, just follow the rep range in the program and stick to that. Because I've been doing this quite a few years, I like to look for different ways to increase my intensity, and I also like to experiment, in different ways to see what develops better. There's no right or wrong to that. There's hundreds of different combinations of ways you can add intensity to take the muscle to fatigue. So here you'll see that again. There's the hard contraction. I'm really contracting. The rest of my body's quite relaxed. I'm just holding it stable. The only muscle I'm trying to, or the only area I'm trying to move is just my hamstrings. And you'll see soon I'm gonna exhaust. So I'm getting pretty exhausted here, and I'm holding. I'm going down slow. Contract the quads. How far am I gonna come back up? Ooh, almost a full range. Contract the quads. partial, so that's not even halfway, it's just a tiny bit, another tiny bit, another tiny bit, hold, and then I'm done. And you can see my face there. I think I swore there. But you can see as I'm standing up, the burn is awesome. Now what do? I stay focused. Another key thing I'm doing here, I'm constantly breathing through my nose throughout this whole workout. I haven't really opened my mouth to breathe. Why? Nasal breathing has a multitude of benefits for all sorts, from walking, breathing, meditating, to exercise, where it regulates nitric oxide in our blood better, which is so much better for performance, for flooding the muscles that we're training with nutrient. So nasal breathing is certainly something we should look at, and I will actually do a video on why nasal breathing is so good, because it's such a huge topic in itself. So there you can see I squeezed and I stretched. Now, because I'm finished the workout, I'm now just going to give my quads an extra squeeze. So I'm really squeezing, and then I'm going to squeeze my hamstrings now. So I'm squeezing my hamstrings. There you can see I'm bending my legs, and I'm shaking them out just to get that extra bit of focus. And that's it, we're done.
So hopefully that workout was a little bit of insight of how I train, the intensity levels I sometimes take it to, the ranges of motion and why I do certain things. I'm going to be putting a few other exercises up that I record of myself, and I'll talk over it as well, to sort of, hopefully it can help and give you some insights, and also different variations, some ideas. If you're doing your own stuff, there's no reason why you couldn't follow on in this workout and let me know how you find it. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the like button. It helps me, and I'd really appreciate any comments or anything else you'd like to see. Just hit me down in the comments below, and I'll get to it here in the TRX Traveler Studio. Oh, and also if you know any good plants, you can see that side. You can see I love collecting plants, and I fill my studio with all sorts. Got quite a lot of bamboo and stuff down there. If you know of any good house plants, let me know, and I will get them and I'll add them to the studio and turn this place into an environmental, nature, meditative TRX and studio. Thanks very much for watching.